Inspire with Nendrix, the foundation.
Hello and welcome back, Embracing Arms community. Thank you for joining us last week as we kicked off our new interview series. Get excited about homeschooling, the new normal. In this series, we will engage parents from all over the country in a conversation about their homeschooling decisions, their journey with homeschooling, some best practices, and COVID-19's impact on not only the general homeschooling experience or academic assistance of their children, but also its impact on their children's social connection. As we discussed last week, homeschooling is a form of education in which parents or others provide educational instruction for children at home rather than entering the children in a traditional public or private school setting, and it is also a hotly debated issue. Many children are being educated at home in the United States, and some reports revealed that in the 2017-2018 school year, there were around 1.1 to 1.7 million children receiving their education through homeschooling with either a parent or a guardian or a tutor. Unfortunately, not all states have a requirement of reporting the accurate numbers. So we predict that as of 2020, that number may have increased significantly due to COVID-19. Today is part 2 of Homeschooling, the New Normal, and we have with us with Miss Terri Lynn Nelson. So let me tell you a little bit about Miss Lynn Nelson. Terri is a current resident of Atlanta, Georgia. She is a life coach and project manager. She's had 23 years of experience homeschooling more than 20 young future scholars, including her now adult biological children, 3 amazing young men, and 3 fabulous young ladies. As a single mother and pre-social media, we wonder how in the world was she able to make it through 6 children homeschooling. So I want to welcome her to our space today. Thank you for joining us today, Terri. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. We are just so excited because there's just so much that we could be talking about in terms of, you know, homeschooling and that experience. But before we get into this journey, let us pause for a minute so that you can have an opportunity to talk to the audience and just introduce yourself and tell them a little bit something about you that maybe I don't even know.
Well, you know, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia now. I hail from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Yay, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And at the time, Pennsylvania had the strictest laws in regards to homeschooling. That's one thing that we don't know. So that's the one thing that I had to navigate, the laws of Pennsylvania's homeschooling laws. I have 6 children, 3 of each, 3 boys, 3 girls. I'm the proud grandmom of 3 and homeschool children. 1 by choice and 2 by virtual school and the COVID. I am a project manager as well as a life coach. And I feel like a dinosaur in this whole process of homeschooling because I've been doing it for so long. The words have changed, the wording has changed in regards to right now they use different words than I use then, but it's all basically the same thing and we want the same outcome.
Yeah. I figured that and when I started the conversation about homeschooling, I had reached out to a couple people and then I paused a little bit and I said, wait a minute, I remember Terri homeschooling and I just thought that was so unique. And then I started to reflect on the fact that, wait, she was homeschooling way before this internet was popping off with all of this easy access, you know, to information. And I'm really, you know, curious as to, you know, what her experience was. So, you know, since you began your homeschooling journey way before social media and way before the ease of access to educational resources on the internet, how do you think your experience was compared to the experience of homeschooling parents today?
A lot harder, a lot harder. And I would bet bottoms to dollar that my kids would say that they would have rather been homeschooling now in this particular era than then. A lot of times then we had to go in search of our, you know, curriculum. The school would not give us curriculum. They did not want to lose their school dollars, which I understand. They did not want to lose their school dollars because you get dollars per student. So they did not favor us for homeschooling. So if we got homeschooling notebooks or workbooks, they were years past. So we had to go in search of ours. Now you have it easily accessed online. You have it where you can go on a computer. We had one computer, and it was a desktop. It was sitting in the kitchen because we had to be careful what your children were doing. And I had 6 children. Now at the time, I will have to admit, I was at the very end of this process, a single parent of 6 children. But in the beginning, I did have the help of a mate, my ex-husband, to do so. So I have to give him credit where, credit is due in regards to that. We had to go searching for everything. So it is much easier today in regards to the information, but it's not easier in regards to the amount of kids that you're homeschooling.
And so you did it all on one computer. So, and you only have what, 8 hours in the day, 8 waking hours, if you want to, exclude when you're sleeping and when you're eating and socializing. So how did you manage school? Because there were different age, ranges. How did you manage using that one computer for their lessons throughout the day?
The best way that I don't know if it's changed now as far as how you can do that, but we were called multi-generational teachers. Say we were learning about the Oregon Trail, for instance. If we were learning about the Oregon Trail, I would have let's say an 8th grader, 2 6th graders, then a 3rd grader, a 2nd grader, and a 1st grader. I would have to go and I would have to pull all the information, and reacquaint myself with the information that I was going to teach, of course. And I would have to put it to an 8th grade level. Then I'd send it to the 6th grade level, then the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st. I learned to use one complete lesson because even though they're different ages, they still have the knowledge base to learn about the Oregon Trail in the 1st grade.
Okay.
So I had to take all the information I got, then break it down into different grade levels and let them be able to understand it on their level. A lot of paper. I was printing like crazy. A lot of times I would print in the summertime.
Oh, okay.
I would print in the summertime. I would spend my whole summer printing different pages of what I wanted to do and getting my folders together for each of the kids. I color coded. So, Ariel would have blue, Andre would have green, Layra would have orange, and I color coded all the way down to Noah. And I'd get their folders together Monday through Friday so that they would have what they were going to do during that time frame. And I'd also read every book. And I encourage parents to even do that today. Read what your kids are reading because you don't know what they're getting and what they're ingesting. I would read every book that I was going to introduce to them and let them have over the summer. Like we be playing, we might be at the park, I'd be reading, they'd be playing. So I would do that and I'd have it ready for them. That way I knew my favorite subject was language arts, so that was no issue. I was like, let's read.
Right.
So, I mean, it was hard, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the fact that my kids were with me. I enjoyed the fact that I knew what they were ingesting.
So, that's interesting that you actually read all of those books, before introducing them to your children. I guess it makes sense because you were their educator, right? So as educators, while we're selecting literature, we're selecting books and texts and things for our classroom, it's assumed that the educator is reading what they're going to be using in the classroom because you need to kind of consume the content so you know how to construct the syllabus for the students. But we do know that there are people who select those books, educators, especially in higher ed, we know that they select those books just because they were offered without actually reading through them. And so to me, that's unique because I know that my daughter would come home, my sons would come home with books and I'm like, oh, that's your social studies book. Okay, get to reading. I never read through their books. Did you believe at the time you were academically qualified to successfully teach your children at home?
That's twofold. Let me give you twofold answer to that. First of all, I was not qualified with a degree. I had not passed the teacher's GACE or the Pennsylvania's equivalency to the Georgia GACE, the children, the test that the teachers take.
Right.
I was not qualified. I had not graduated from college at the time. No, I was not qualified to that extent, but I was qualified in the sense that I had a really extensive knowledge base, and I was able to actually digest it and then give it back to my kids. And all of the children that I've ever been able to homeschool, I've been able to take the knowledge and give it back. Okay. It's no different than when we were back in the, I guess I want to go way back before me. I'm not even a dinosaur compared to back in the day, right, when they didn't have any other choice, when brick and mortar was not an option.
Right.
When brick and mortar was not an option, the parents taught their children as much as they knew. Okay. And then it was up to, the extras teachers and to go on beyond that. So I did have that kind of qualification, the knowledge base that I knew I could give what I knew.
Right, right. That's good. That's good to know, because I know that, we have some of our interviewees who feel like in order for, you to be comfortable with the material, you should have some type of formalized education around that. But I had the pleasure of watching your journey, not throughout the entire process, but I was always fascinated because I knew that was just something that I felt like I couldn't do. And then I eventually end up teaching, but in higher ed and not so much in the home. So, and I watched how focused you were. I remember coming to your home and you had, like you said, things were color coded and things were so organized. I'm like, wow, yeah, if I gotta be like that, yeah, these babies gotta go to public school. So we know in Georgia, there are nearly 2 million children that between the ages of 5 and 17 in Georgia, and nearly 44,000, I think, is registered as homeschool. Some will argue that there isn't a real agreement on what constitutes a real homeschool student. And, what is actually tracked by each state may vary, considerably. What do you believe the real definition of a homeschool child is?
For me, the definition of a real homeschool child is any child that has a parent that is teaching them right from wrong. Mm-hmm. You are a homeschool teacher. Let me change that wording, because a lot of times when you say teacher, people assume that they mean someone who has the degree. Mm-hmm. You are a learning coach. Mm-hmm. And that's what I used to call myself. I used to call myself their learning coach. So you are their learning coach if you are teaching them to brush their teeth. Mm-hmm. You are their learning coach if you are teaching them right from wrong, not to touch anything hot. So homeschooling begins from birth. But then it's up to whoever wants to continue on with that and go farther, with education to do so. What's happening now with COVID is a little different also, mm-hmm. because I would not call the parents that are home with their children's teachers or learning coaches. I would call them learning facilitators. Mm-hmm. Because they're literally facilitating the environment. Right. And that's just as important as a teacher, just as important as a learning coach. Anybody that can facilitate an environment of 3 different kids and running around, and Johnny don't want to put no pants on, Susie don't want to do this. You are facilitating a good learning environment if you can continue to juggle that. So I think that homeschooling needs to be redefined right now, or in this time frame. I think homeschooling starts from birth.
Right. That's good. That's a good point. When I was playing around on the social media a couple of days ago, just to try to get some additional content, to see what educators are saying out there about homeschooling, it was pretty much of a consensus from some of the educators, the certified teachers, who were like pushing back on this idea that every parent is a homeschool, school parent, or every parent is a teacher. No, they would say that you're not homeschooling. We're teaching your kid. You're facilitating this learning environment, like you said, or you're supporting their learning experience. And so that makes sense, because we have educators who are literally on the system with the kids every day, helping them, teaching them, trying to integrate this learning environment with this digital platform. And parents are there as kind of like their partners in that, not necessarily, doing the direct teaching. When your kids were actually going through the homeschooling experience, did they ever question why they were being homeschooled and ever had like a desire to be schooled like the general population?
Well, I've raised my children to be very vocal,
Okay.
so probably twice a day. I've had something to say, Mom, you suck. You suck, Mom. We don't want to do this more. And on the flip side, I've said, y'all know what, y'all suck today. Just get out. Just get out. I want you to leave. If you don't want me to teach you, I want you to go in that school bus and go to school and let the teacher deal with you. And I can remember when we were at Penn State campus living while we were in college, and we were in these student dorms living with all 6 of our children.
Right, I remember that. It was like family housing or something like that. Yeah.
I put all of them out one day. I put them on the front porch. I got them dressed. I was like, don't come back until you have gone to school. And they sat out there all day long. But I needed a mental day because they had been questioning. And you know, what I was gonna say is I have taught them to be very vocal, and I've always taught them to vocalize their feelings. And at times, to be very honest, their feelings were absolutely valid.
Mm-hmm.
There were days that I just didn't meet the mark. And you know, the one thing that I had to learn in regards to that, because before I became a project manager, I actually did do what we call a preferred substitute teacher in Cobb County. I was like grandfathered in to do teaching. The preferred substitute teacher, she comes in and you don't have to, you know, when substitute teachers come in, kids don't do nothing.
Right. It's playtime.
When they called me, it was because they did not want their curriculum to be interrupted. I could still teach everything that their teacher was doing. I could facilitate the test. I could facilitate all of the other things. So I got to see the flip side of teaching.
Oh, wow.
So, and I did that for 10 years here in Georgia. Well, 8 years here in Georgia. And so I got to see the flip side of homeschooling. I got to actually see being a teacher. And the funny thing that I've noticed is it's harder as a parent. Mm-hmm. It's harder as a parent because those are your children.
Right.
Your children know your buttons.
Right.
Your children know when you are having an off day. Your children know, and your children can probably say different things to you that they might not get away with saying to the teacher.
Exactly.
So I've got to see the different sides of it. And my kids, they question me. They question me and they challenge me, which is a good thing because now I watch them as adults in their professions and being able to be vocal. And it worked. So if you question me on good days, if you question me on bad days, those are days that I've had to apologize. Even now, there's some things that we can be talking about when we're in a group. Right. And I said, Mama apologizes. I'm so sorry because you live and learn.
Right. And I think the other thing was that not only do they know your triggers and they know when they can test you, they say things that they may not otherwise say when they're in the classroom, but they live with you all day. So you can't escape them outside of putting them on a porch and telling them not to come back, you know, but you can't escape them. So you're dealing with every aspect of, you know, their lives. And aside from the teachers, where in that environment, there is the principal over here, there's the guidance counselor over here, there's the nurse over here, there's the social worker over here, there's that. You become all of those things, including the parent. So yeah, I can imagine how that could be an extra kind of weight for you to carry. What about your family or friends? Did you ever receive negative comments from family and friends about your decision to homeschool your children?
I think my in-laws, they questioned it, but they didn't question it as in, okay, are you know, I don't know about this. They wanted to know more about it. Okay. They wanted to know actually what they could do to help. And my in-laws were amazing. God rest their souls. My in-laws were amazing. If I called my in-laws and I told them that we were learning about Williamsburg, they would say, okay, we're going to plan a trip. Let's go to Williamsburg. If we were learning about Gettysburg, we went to Gettysburg. All of our vacations were always, had never been to Atlanta and saw Martin Luther King's home and all of those things. They were like, let's plan our trip. We're going to plan our trip step by step so that these kids, it was almost like Watson's Go to Birmingham.
Right.
That book, actually, I'm reading that with my grandson right now.
Oh, really?
Bud and not Buddy, we're reading that now. But yeah, my mother and father-in-law were those kind of people. If I needed them, anything material-wise, they were right there, and they made sure they had it.
Awesome. That's what I get excited about the homeschooling experience, is because a lot of the schools, at least when my daughter went to school in Texas, my daughter and my son went to school in Texas, field trips, that was out of the game. Like they weren't doing field trips anymore. And I'm like, what? Like, this is how they get that hands-on experience. Like, they go and touch it, they feel it, they see these things. So to be able to be homeschooled, and you can create that experience for your children and embed those field trips in and make vacations learning experience, that's really cool.
I think back, and it's a shame that they don't do more field trips now, because I mean, you're in Harrisburg, so you can remember some of the field trips. You know how many times we went to that museum and saw that buffalo? We went to that museum and saw that buffalo, but you remember it.
Right.
And you got the concept of that Indian reservation that you saw.
Exactly.
You got the concept of the dinosaur bones, and they don't do that anymore. So I'm very thankful that mine did do that.
Oh yeah. That's great. So we know that homeschooling, according to some studies, will remain the fertile ground, right, for research. There's a lot of research that has not been done yet on homeschooling, and not only as a fascinating educational phenomenon in and of itself, but also for what it pushes out to consider about the purposes of education more broadly. With COVID-19, it has forced many parents to homeschool or provide support for children required to participate in distance learning. And this has caused a lot of frustration for parents for so many reasons. And in your view, were there any major drawbacks to homeschooling? And what do you think about some of the drawbacks that may be happening now as it relates to homeschooling?
Let me think real quick about the back part of it, but then let me address the now. I think the biggest issue, as we see it because of COVID, is the socialization. And the socialization is very important for their mental health. And I think we miss out on that. Even if we do have age groups in the same household, they still want to participate and be a part of their own peer group. So I see that one of the biggest challenges that they have now. And even back, let me go back and add that to the biggest challenge then. I think socialization was probably one of the biggest challenges then as well. But what we did is we created homeschool co-ops. We created co-ops. There was a church in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, that offered a once a month co-op that we took our children to, and they were able to be taught by different teachers, different subjects. They were able to fulfill requirements that they normally wouldn't fulfill at home, gym, physical education, and health. But my co-op was consisted of more Afro-American moms in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and we had an amazing time. We formed friendships within our friendships. My oldest daughter, Ariel, her best friend is still her best friend since then. My son Andre, his best friend then was his best friend since 4th grade.
Wow.
And they've been best friends all this time. And it hasn't changed because of what they learned and what they formed into that friend group there. So yeah, socialization would be the challenge.
So you feel like your children today, because they're all adults now, raising children in some cases in college, do you feel like any one of them has had issues with socialization as an adult because of their experience with homeschooling, because they were in homeschool from K on, right? All the way through. Okay.
all the way. When each child is different,
Mm-hmm.
so I have to address it differently. Let's go through the first three and then the second three.
Okay.
Like, with the first three, I think that it was like my learning. I was learning what right, wrong, and indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to twerk things. They always had friends. They always had friend groups. They always had church. They always had environment, neighborhoods. I never believed in television. To this day, I can remember when you did the television challenge, and I kind of chuckled because we were already not having the TV.
Right.
We didn't have any cable or anything.
Right.
And I never let them have that because why can't you go outside? Go knock on that neighbor's door. My kids were the first ones knocking on them neighbors' doors. So they never had a socialization issue. Ariel now is, one of the head fundraisers and director of a multifaceted different arts division group there in Harrisburg. Little Andre, he's not little, he's 6'5". he is he is a virtual principal.
Oh wow!
So he actually homeschools his daughter. And Layra, she's a professional singer,
Right.
and she's doing amazing. So she gets to. I would have to say with Layra, she's not as comfortable in big crowds, believe it or not, and she's the one that's in front of big crowds.
Right, exactly.
She's the one that's not as uncomfortable because she's like, oh, these too many people, they crowding me, So she's the one that would have that issue. And then you if my second set, Elan is a different breed.
Right.
I have to stop her from talking. If she was in school, she'd have been the one the teacher said, okay, Elan, I'm gonna move you here. And she's like, I don't care where you move me, I'm gonna talk. And Cameron and Noah are more like, I think my three male children are more kind of reserved, and they kind of sit back and they give what's needed, but they're not as willing to go out there. They'll make it happen, but they ain't gonna go out there and, just be talking to anybody.
Absolutely.
They're gonna sit back, watch it, and be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do.
Exactly.
And it's little words and nothing else.
So that's interesting, because we all think that if our children experience things the exact same way and the same, with the same parents and the same environment, they're going to come out exactly the same way. And we prove time and time again that, that's not the case, that we can raise children in the same environment, have the same parents there, the same opportunities, but different, final outcomes. And the opposite is true. And so, but it's nice to know that at least for them, like their socialization wasn't, dramatically impacted. There's some adjustments that they have to make. Some are a little more introverted than others, but that's not, unusual for humans, period. You always have people that are a little more introverted and not as extroverted as maybe you and I would be. Right. What would you do different if you had to do homeschooling, had the opportunity to do it all over again with your children? What's the one thing that you think you would do differently?
I think if I had the chance to do homeschooling differently or again, I think I would have enjoyed it more. I think I would have taken the time to breathe. For me, I was so caught up in what other people would think based upon the fact that I'm doing something different than they are doing, that I walked around with this big S on my chest. Right. Like I had to be superwoman, and I had to make sure that my kids had this, and this, and I was stuffing so much into them that it became an overload for them as and me. So if I could do it again, I would breathe. I would take a chance to breathe and enjoy the process and enjoy the fact that I am the one that's able to be there right now, be there in their life, be there in their education, in their corner. And for me, I didn't get enough time to do it. 18 years just was not enough time for me. So I think that even in this time of COVID, I think the parents really do. Even with that 5-year-old is sitting there, not hearing nothing that you say. And instead of telling you, if Johnny had 3 apples, and keep it getting louder, you're not helping the child get the answer. You just keep getting louder and louder, saying the same thing over. Just breathe.
Yes. Yes.
And I would just breathe, because this is a special time in history. This is a time that we've been given to do the homeschooling, to see what our ancestors had to deal with, because our ancestors had to deal with the same thing. Maybe not the same knowledge base, but the same thing.
The same thing. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's interesting. What advice would you give then to some parents that are really either deciding right now with their spouses, or maybe as a single mom or a dad, to actually try to venture into homeschooling, or maybe they just been pushed into it because of COVID-19? What advice would you give to them to help them manage through this process?
And what I would tell them is to get some but we call them co-ops.
Mm-hmm.
I think they call them educational pods now. They just changed the words.
Isn't
Take educational pods. Find your village.
Mm-hmm.
Find your village of people that you want and have like minds. First of all, parents have to have like minds.
Mm-hmm.
Find a like-minded village that you have like-minded things with, and that you want to teach your kids and you want to instill in your kids. A lot of times when you're in school, and I hate to say it, people might fight me on this, but a lot of times in school, they give you a lot of busy work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You get a lot of busy work instead of that meat and potatoes of what you're supposed to be learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, find that common core group of people who want to give you that meat and potatoes. They want to give their kids the meat and potatoes, and you want to give yours, and you get together and do it together. Mm-hmm. Even if it's, one parent, if your expertise is mathematics, let them teach that. If your expertise is language arts, let them teach it. Make it fun. Make it a family thing. And listen to your kids.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Listen to your kids. Sometimes, don't be afraid to realize what you put in won't come back void.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to know, because what you put them is not going to come back void. So listen to them. Some things that they're saying to you are correct.
Mm-hmm.
And enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy the process. It goes so quick.
So quick. I know, because I can't believe that it's, when we started to talk, I'm like, wow, all of her kids are adults now. They're gone. And I remember them being tiny and going through this process. And I was thinking, goodness, she has a long way to go, and it's over.
It's over. And the funny thing is, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who is reading. Wow. because her father, who was homeschooled, and her mother, who went to Milton Hershey, have like minds, and they decided that they were going to teach that 2-year-old way before her time. This child is looking at words, and she can sight read like crazy.
Wow.
But that's part of they decided, and they made the decision that homeschooling was going to be the way for them to go.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I know some people, our age, still trying to figure out them sight words. So that's awesome. Well, thank you. Well, this is our lightning round. So we're entering into our lightning round now. So as you know, we have a set of controversial questions, or some questions that are considered controversial, and we share those questions and those statements with our interviewee, and we ask you to respond to it either in the affirmative or the negative, or if it's too controversial, just say pass. We have 20 seconds to do the questions. Are you ready?
I am ready.
You're ready? Okay. The first one is, it is expensive to homeschool.
Yes.
Yes, okay. The second one is, current public school curriculum needs to be changed.
I agree.
The third one is, homeschool children do not receive the same quality of education.
I disagree with that totally.
And then the last one is, parents should have formalized education to homeschool.
I think parents should have a knowledge base that they are willing to share with their children. That does not necessarily mean that they're going to have an education that is well, I'm a Penn State person, but it's Penn State, it not necessarily mean that they're going to have a Penn State education, but they have to be willing to share that knowledge base and grow themselves, because there might be a class that they need to go back and take in order to teach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Terri. Thank you for participating in our interview today. And thank you for participating in the lightning round. We are so proud of the work that you've done with these amazing young people. And we know that they're going back into the community to change lives. And we're already seeing it with the 2-year-old doing that sight reading. She might be able to teach us a couple things. So, so thank you again. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in again this week. If there was something that you heard today that energized you or triggered additional question, please remember to comment below, like, share, and subscribe, and join us again next week as I engage in another conversation with Dr. Tiffany McKinnon Russell, the mother of the now infamous dancing Disney princess and a homeschool parent as well as a consultant. If you want more information about Terri Nelson and the work that she's doing in her consulting business, please, her information is below. Click, share, ask questions, get in contact with her. I also want to remind my listeners to be safe, practice social distancing, and if you don't want to wear a face covering for you, wear it because you care about others. Please remember to go out in the community and embrace someone. They're waiting on you, and continue to live your absolute best life.
Good afternoon, Embracing Orange community. This is Terri Lynn Nelson, straight from the Peach State, Atlanta, Georgia. I'm coming to you as a project manager, as well as a contractual life coach here in Georgia. I want to encourage each of you to live your best life.
My prescription, boy, this is my medicine. The world can be sickening and living in house resemblance, not to mention the media's effort to keep us in the most simplistic state of mind. Lowest age bracket committing the highest rate of crime. People dying way before they hit their age of prime. Thinking success only happens if they shoot hoops, move cane or rhyme. Peek through these blinds, over the porch and into these streets. You see why protective moms keep their daughters out of reach from activities. Sure to have them 6 feet deep under the grounds where our local dope dealers meet from a window.